Columbus, Georgia, this is your city council. Mayor Teresa Tomlinson. City Manager Isaiah Hughley. Pop Barnes, District 1. Glenn Davis, District 2. Bruce Huff, District 3. Evelyn Turner Pugh, Mayor Pro Tem and District 4. Mike Baker, District 5. Gary Allen, District 6. Mimi Woodson, District 7. Tom Buck, District 8. Judy Thomas, Post 9 at-large counselor. Skip Henderson, Post 10 at-large counselor. Tiny Washington, Clerk of Council. And City Attorney Clifton Fay. Columbus, Georgia, this is your City Council.
Good morning, and welcome to the July 14th council meeting. I'm Evelyn Pugh, Mayor Pro Tem. The mayor is out of the office this morning. Her father is having surgery, so I ask that we be in prayer for the family. With that in mind, we'd ask Captain Mark Burnett, Chaplain, Columbus Fire EMS, to come forward, please. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Let us bow our hearts this morning in prayer. Father, we love you so much today. Lord, as we sit around this council chamber today, we acknowledge that we need your help. We need your wisdom. We need your guidance on the business that is to be conducted here today. And Father, we pray, Lord, that you would enlighten us with wisdom, guide us with the right things to do to bring honor and glory to your name. Father, we do pray for Mayor Tomlinson's father this morning. Lord, that you would touch him. Lord, I believe you created us. I believe you can heal us. And I believe you can guide the doctor's hands this morning. So we pray a blessing over her family. And Lord, today let us just bring glory to your name through this meeting and all that we do. In Christ's name we pray. Let everyone say amen.
Amen. Thank you, Captain. Our pledge is supposed to be led by Tinkertown, but I don't think that they're here yet. So with that, if we would stand and we'll ask Councilor Henderson to lead us in the pledge. Thank you. You have your minutes of the council meeting of June 9th. What's council's pleasure? It has been properly moved and second that we adopt the minutes from the June 9th meeting. All those in favor of that motion say aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We just have a few items this morning. First one up is a special exception use. This is a public hearing for restaurant use at 222 7th Street. It's recommended approval by Planning Advisory Commission and the Planning Department. The applicant, Mr. Milligan, are you here? If y'all want to come on up and give them a brief synopsis of what you're proposing and your name and address. Mr. McKenna.
Good morning. I'm Robert McKenna. I'm with Page Ground, Sprouse, Tucker, and Ford, and I'm representing Project 222 this morning in connection with its special exception use for 222 7th Street. This is, as most people know, the old Cafe 222, which has been in operation, or had been in operation for close to 30 years, down on the corner of 7th and 3rd Avenue. So we're requesting that it be permitted as a restaurant use again, since it was previously used in connection with a bed and breakfast, which is no longer being used as such.
Well, wait. Let's before we vote, we want to hear from anybody opposed and see if anybody's got questions. Got anybody that wants to speak on this? Come on up, ma'am. Give them your name and address, please.
Certainly. Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Susan Weigel. I live at 215 7th Street. I want to thank Council and Mayor Pro Tem for this opportunity to speak again on this matter. Here we are again. Now you're to vote by resolution on whether a special exception for a general use restaurant will be allowed at 222 7th Street, a property in the midst of a mostly residential, non-commercial area of the original city historic district. And during this process, we've presented and submitted pertinent facts about why changing the UDO in the first place to even allow general use restaurants was short-sighted. And we were a few voices, but we were the voices of many. Many people who felt that their voice could not be heard because there were some louder voices that were kind of dampening them down, or they felt that there might be some social or neighborhood repercussions to speaking out. I want to be clear, this is not a personal issue for me regarding the owner of the property. I don't even know Mr. Milligan. I just know that he lives in the district. I would not have been in favor of this change regardless of the petitioner or applicant. It is personal for me. It's personal about my block, and it's personal about my neighborhood. It really is personal in this respect. This is still advocacy about smart urban growth in historic areas and how people are affected by these zoning decisions. You voted to change the UDO despite the neighborhood input and their vote against changing the UDO, and Councilor Woodson voted in opposition to changing the UDO. And unfortunately, I fear that your decision regarding a special exception has already been made as well. But I'm still hopeful about the process, and I'm hopeful that the council can make the right decision about the use of a building based on its particular location and impact on the surrounding properties and people. I've read what planning had to say in their support of this. It's not just about a plat or a square on a map in the district. It's about all the residences that surround this plat. We've worked around a use that's really a square peg and a round hole type of use for a very small footprint in a very small lot in this particular location. This was not operating as a restaurant for 30 years. The Pounds morphed it into a full-service restaurant as an accessory use of their B&B. They first pulled the license in 2007, which I believe Ms. Evers testified before. Changing this use has the potential to affect the lives and potentially the property values of everybody in the immediate area. It's also about how this particular approval can affect the district as a whole down the road when other petitioners come forward to you, asking you to ignore problems with other sites as well. That's very important. I really can't emphasize that enough. We keep talking about the parking issue because it's visible. You can get your head around it. People are bothered by parking. It annoys them. There will be a parking impact. I've lived through it. I now have neighbors in my block who don't have off-street parking, and they will be affected even more every single day. If this use is approved, we will now have not one, but two business entities in this one short block, both of them which can host events, and the district has been against buildings with event hosting in the past, competing with homeowners for on-street parking. New residents to the area who didn't see parking as issue haven't lived here when this location was being used by the B&B as a full-blown restaurant. It's been out of service for 4 years almost now. And don't forget, 3rd Avenue southbound, which adjoins this plat, is a no parking area. That southbound lane, there is no parking. And 7th Street recently came up on the city's own resurfacing list is slated for bike lanes. Now that's interesting. This is also about other people, the people in cars trying to park wherever they can, traipsing on homeowners' lawns, generating refuse and noise, people leaving trash, people parking on the city right-of-way, and people blocking walkways and crosswalks. We've been told that these issues will all be addressed by enforcement. We don't get enforcement now. Just recently, there was a car blocked on 3rd Avenue. Police were called. They never came. People did not have access to their property. People would be screaming about this in the district if their loved one who was handicapped, on crutches, their young child in a stroller, if they couldn't access their property. And it's interesting how the lines of privacy and respect blur when a restaurant business is introduced into the residential mix. All we have to do is look at Minnie's impact. We talked about that before. And it's interesting how some of my neighbors don't see this as a problem because it's not in their block. They think it's charming. It will be cool to have a restaurant again. It'll breathe life into the community. We have lots of life already. And it's an appropriate use for a building that just because it has tables and chairs and a kitchen, let's make it a restaurant again, when it never should have been one in the first place. And when the nostalgia for a favorite dining spot that was open for decades on Broadway was brought into the mix of the discussion, it became fine to make a couple of exceptions, but still not okay in the rest of the district. So am I opposed to truly innovative and appropriate uses of properties in the district which can enhance and improve our property values? Certainly not. I've advocated for this for years. After 11 years of serving on the HDPS board, 3 years as president, and 6 years of serving on the Board of Historic Columbus, I've researched and studied the effects of previous bad zoning decisions in historic districts. We can look to almost every historic district in this country for these bad effects. We can rewind the clock sometimes, and sometimes we can't. The district is still dealing with previous bad zoning decisions. We have inappropriate apartments and businesses and locations. I've only lived there for almost 12 years, and we've been battling them. People have invested their lives. They came to the district 30 years ago and have been battling this. I've learned that cities can make the best decisions when it comes to the use of properties when they're not swayed by investors, business owners, developers, people that make a profit out of properties, or who propose that any use is better than no use at all, and who invoke the threat of neglected and empty buildings, or even a use that might be perceived by people in the neighborhood as a less desirable use. If we allow this special exception with planning saying there's no parking requirement, we've opened the door to the hen house. We've let the foxes in. It can happen anywhere in the district. People aren't even thinking that that's what can happen, but it will. Because when the next case comes to you, it's in a different location, maybe on Broadway, maybe somewhere else in the district, what are you going to say? How can you say no? You have to say yes. You've already said yes to something that doesn't work. I'm still hoping that this council can make the right decision, despite the fact that I think this decision is already made. If the special exception is granted for this property, which is definitely not a good location for a restaurant for many reasons, a restaurant can end up in any building anywhere in the district, regardless of its impact on the people that live there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other?
Does anybody else want to be heard now on this resolution? Any questions? All right, we can go back to our motion, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, the motion was to allow the passage of the special exception. We had a motion and a second, right? Yes, sir. Councilor Baker.
That's all right. That's me. That's okay. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I just wanted to thank the young lady for her comments. And anytime there's some, and by the way, we use special exceptions so that we do have an opportunity to evaluate each and every application as it comes forward on its own merits. And I appreciate your passion for your neighborhood and the way you're fighting to try to protect the historic district and particularly your block. Now, a couple of quick comments. One, I think that any time an administration makes a representation to the people and to the legislative body that this is an acceptable use, then the onus is on us to do the enforcement. The onus is on us to make sure we do respond, whether we have to incorporate Metra in some of the folks that are operating downtown already, or whether we have to try to make sure we've got some patrols that are going through there during peak hours and making sure that now you're shaking your head, and I know it may not be happening now, but I'm telling you, if we go forward, this is going to happen. Otherwise, we have dropped the ball. But none of these decisions are made in a silo. Nobody just listens to somebody calling on the phone. I can't say nobody. I don't listen to somebody calling on the phone asking for a particular vote on a consideration. We take a look at, we talk to the other parties that are involved. We talk to Uptown. We do talk to the neighbors. We talk to the folks at the historic district, the BIHAR. We talk to all the folks that have sort of a stake in this. So my personal feeling is that this is an acceptable use based on the information I've gathered. I respect your opinion, and I appreciate you sharing it. But I just want to make sure you understood why I'm voting the way I am.
I see no more lights. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. All those opposed, nay. Passes.
All right. That request has been passed and approved. Okay, item 2, we've got a resolution concerning issuance of Housing Authority of Columbus, Georgia, bond issuance, $30 million for improvements at Wilson, Nicholson Terrace, E.J. Knight, and Farley Homes. Mr. McKenna is here. If there are any questions on that one, it's ready for adoption.
What's council's pleasure? It has been properly moved and second. I see no lights on. All those in favor of that motion say aye. All those opposed, nay. Passes.
All right.
Thank you.
That's passed. Our last resolution is also related to a bond issuance by the Columbus, Georgia Development Authority, $10 million for an assisted living facility, and that is ready for adoption.
It has been properly moved and second. Are there any questions? I see no lights. All those in favor of the motion say aye. All those opposed, nay. It passes.
All right. All those that passed, thank you, Mr. McKenna, for being here on those. Mayor Pro Tem, we'd like a short executive session on litigation at the end of the meeting. That's all we have listed.
Okay. Public agenda. That's a public agenda.
Right, public agenda.
Okay. Mr. Robert Lackey, representing the North Winton Village Neighborhood Watch. Mr. Lackey, if you would give your name and address, please.
Robert Brian Lackey, 2101 Young Street, Unit
Okay.
B as in boy.
Okay.
Thank you all so much for letting me come and talk to you this morning. Again, my name is Brian Lackey. I work in the City Engineering Department, the GIS Division, but I'm also the Neighborhood Watch Coordinator for Winton Village Neighborhood Watch Group. We're a neighborhood watch group located directly behind Columbus High School, flanked by St. Paul United Methodist Church, and over to 17th Avenue. We have about 125 persons that are a part of our neighborhood watch group out of about 150 total dwellings in our area. We're a new group. We've only been in existence for less than a year. But the reason that we came into existence was because we have very unique issues in our neighborhood that have been not addressed for years and years and years. The neighborhood, when I moved there about 4 years ago, was dealing with the issues, and we're still dealing with the issues. Nothing seems to be getting addressed consistently and persistently. And so we began a process whereby, when we formed the Neighborhood Watch Group, we decided that we wanted to take a material count and quantify the issues in the neighborhood to find out, is there truly a problem? Or are these just some extreme people in the neighborhood who have various issues that they want addressed for their own personal agendas? So we began a process of a survey, door to door, and it took me about, I think, 4 or 5 months going door to door collecting information, much longer than I anticipated. I believe you all have a report that I submitted to you all for your review. Anybody had a chance to read it yet? You just got it. Please take the time to read it. It's a quick read, but it's also a very in-depth read with a lot of detail in there. It's not too heavy with statistics. It's got a lot of maps in there. That's what I do for a living, geographic information systems. I took a survey and I put it in a map form to make it easy to understand. But it quantifies the issue, and it also shows you where the people who have issues live. A picture is worth 1,000 words, as they would say. That being said, I come from a very large family, but I'm also, in my immediate family, an only child, which means that I don't like being around a lot of people for a very long time. For no other reason than when family come into town, they dirty up my house and I have to clean up behind them. This is my extended family. These are the rising sophomores, juniors, and seniors at Columbus High School. They're like family. They're like our extended family. And you can see, because remember, Columbus High School is a magnet school. They draw from all over the county. From the far ends of the county to north and a little bit in the south. And they all converge in our neighborhood. 558 students do not ride school buses at Columbus High School. They drive themselves, or mom and dad drive them. Take your pick. That's a lot of kids coming into a parking lot designed for 235 parking spaces. So you can imagine where the ones who don't have a parking space designated for them park. They park in front of our homes. And like a good extended family, when they leave, we have to clean the trash up. I find it very interesting that the previous speaker was talking about similar issues with parking, trash, things of that nature. In that report, it goes into a lot of detail about who screams the most about trash in particular, because that is the number one issue in our neighborhood. We even have an older lady that walks the streets about once a week, picks up the trash, and disposes of it. Bless her heart, I love her to death. She does that, but she shouldn't have to do it. The kids are responsible for the trash because, and I'm just as guilty of this when I was a kid, when you come to school in the morning, you've got your bacon, egg, and cheese McDonald's wrapper, you take it, you throw it on the ground when you walk in. But if you look in that neighborhood, you'll see a lot of them, and you'll see a lot of coffee cups and a lot of Coke cans all littered throughout there, and we have to pick them up. Okay, it is what it is. And we have escalated that to the school. Nothing has come out of it. The flip side to it is we also have an issue with the parking blocking people's line of sight when they come out of their driveways, creating a safety hazard. Again, that's a very simple solution. You get law enforcement involved. But writing parking tickets doesn't solve the long-term problem. We have been taking advantage of law enforcement to come out and write tickets for years. And once again, we're standing here with the same problem. We're not getting long-term fixes, long-term solutions. So about a month ago, on June 17th, we invited the people that we believe were the correct decision makers to a meeting. We met downstairs in the community room. We brought folks from the school district, Doc Dorsey for the traffic engineer, myself, Frosty Ross from the police department, as well as Counselor Barnes. And we sat at the table and we tried to create solutions. We tried to start the conversation, and it went nowhere. It fell flat quick. The school district is not interested and working with us to alleviate the off-campus parking problem. They don't see it as their problem. That being said, I was asked to come before you all today with solutions, ideas. Well, I'm not an engineer, but I do have some solutions. But I'm going to hold off on those solutions at this immediate time because I want to go into detail about the trash issue. We are having conversations with the operations department at the school district. We're working with them to possibly add aesthetically pleasing trash cans on the edge of their property. Give the kids an opportunity to throw their trash away instead of just putting it in our neighbors' yards. Let's see if that works. The school district is going through a contract renewal right now, I believe, with an organization to actually do trash pickup. We'll see where that goes. But the trash can idea is still good because not only do we have the parking problem during regular school hours, we also have this issue during baseball game time as well, which is probably a little bit more paramount than during the regular hours. But either way, we are slowly making progress in getting the trash issue addressed. But we still need to address the issue of off-campus parking. These are kids, they're citizens, they're just like everyone else. They just want to find a place to park their car and go to school, and we get that. This is not a neighborhood versus the school. This is not a neighborhood versus the kids situation. We need to find a place that these kids can park their cars and go to school. Of course, I grew up in rural Virginia. So if you didn't have a parking spot on the high school grounds, you weren't allowed to drive to school. That's a very simple solution. And honestly, that's a viable solution here. All the principal has to do is say, if you don't have a parking spot with your number on it, you don't drive in. Seems like an easy solution to me. Looking at this issue, and by the way, if I didn't go into enough detail about this, these are the addresses for every single student. We got them from the school district. So this is accurate information. One thing I've asked the school district to do is to look at satellite parking. Create satellite parking spots here, here, and out here. And then bus your kids back to the school. You can't tell me that's not a viable solution. But they're not interested in looking at that. We can stripe parking lanes in front of people's houses so that the homeowners have a place to park their cars. Put their house number in front of there so they actually have a dedicated place where they can park. Because on Wildwood, we do have a few homeowners that have to park street side. I thought you had a question. Another famous solution in our neighborhood, which I don't even think is going to go to too many places, is make the school make a decision. Do you want your baseball field or do you need a parking deck more? Take your pick. But they chose a baseball field in lieu of using that extra real estate on their property to build a bigger parking lot. So I'm going to show you another picture. This is 2004. This is their parking lot. There is no formal parking within that jurisdiction on that property. The kids park every which way but loose, all over the place. And when you look all around the school, you don't see a lot of kids parking off campus. They were able to fit everybody at this time on their property. Look over here in 2007 when the parking lot was created. All of a sudden now you're starting to see the volumes that's being pushed out onto the streets. Look down here. You see more street side parking being utilized in the park. And over here, you're not going to be able to see this, but the last weekend of May, we actually went around and we looked at where all the kids were parking. About 5 of us walked the streets and we made notes of where the kids are parking. On that particular day, 199 kids took up parking spaces in the park, Forest, Wildwood, 20th, and the parking lot at St. Paul United Methodist Church. That's a lot of kids parking off campus. The UDO is very specific about that. It calls for 5 parking spots per classroom. So if you do your math, that's 330 parking spaces that should be on that campus that aren't there. That would alleviate a hefty amount of that parking problem right there. But that's just one solution of many. Historically, we've gone door to door and gotten petitions. This is a petition for Wildwood between Sonora Street down to 17th Street. And these are the majority of the homeowners that said, yes, you've got to do something to block or ban the parking on our street. We're tired of the kids parking in front of our houses, blocking our access to our driveways. Take your pick. They're just fed up. But we said no to this. We got the signatures, but we asked.
Excuse me, Mr. Lackey, your first 5 minutes is up. Our timer is not working correctly, but you do have another 5 minutes.
Okay. Either way, we don't want to continue going street to street to street, banning parking. That just moves the problem down the street. And we know that. That's what has historically gone on for years and years and years. What the neighborhood wants is to create a comprehensive parking solution of the whole area. That really, at this point, kind of summarizes what I wanted to talk about. But as far as yesterday, I had a chance to sit in on a meeting having to do with the proposed bike lanes. I believe Ms. Thomas was in there and some of the others. And what's interesting is Cherokee Avenue right down here is a prime candidate for something with a bike lane on it. We're going to need to solve that parking problem before that comes into effect. Because then all these kids who park down right in front of the park on Cherokee Avenue, they're going to be displaced. So they're going to move somewhere else. So before that time appears and we have to make those decisions, why not start addressing this parking problem now? The school district isn't going to work with us. They've already told us that very emphatically. And that's why I was asked to be here today to ask you all for your help. Let's look at a bigger picture solution to this problem. Any questions?
Councilman Henderson?
Robert, thank you. I wish every neighborhood watch captain had some GIS experience. This is helpful, and I appreciate all the work you guys have done. This is really, I want to express my gratitude. We have a lot of folks come up here and lay problems at our feet, but very few come up with substantiating and empirical evidence and some suggestions as well. I don't take this as as a statement that I don't believe you, but I'm having trouble digesting the fact that the school district is not interested in a mutually beneficial resolution of this. And I think what we're faced with is if we take give and take and negotiating off the table, what we're left with is putting up signs saying no parking and a ticket in every one of those kids. And I can tell you that parking was a problem in 1976 when I was trying to nurse a 1966 Chevy back and forth to Columbus High 2. So it's been an ongoing problem. I can tell you my personal perspective, they should be parking along the park. I mean, that provides, in my mind, the least amount of intrusiveness into the neighborhood. And you're right, there used to not be any lined parking spaces in there, and everybody's wedged in there any way they could get in there. But I think we ought to ask our city manager to meet with the school district and explain to them that this is a pretty serious issue when we've got folks that are dealing with. The Magnet program, one of my kids went through there, and they're always looking for community projects. And why in the world they wouldn't just organize some type of committee within the school to, on weekends, do a sweep down the streets and do it as part of their community service hours that they are required to accumulate in order to graduate. So it just seems to me there's too many opportunities just by the very nature of the way that school operates to try to come up with some solutions. We'll never get rid of all the parking, but certainly I think there ought to be a way to create an environment where the neighborhood doesn't feel like they're being taken advantage of. And I don't think the kids are meaning to do that. They're running like we were. They're running 15 minutes late to the first class, trying to jump out the car and get to class. So I would ask the city manager to go back to the school district, lay out some options, try to uncover some options, and let them know that if left to no other solutions, we'll have to make it no parking in front of those houses, and then it's a real issue for them. So anyway, thank you for your presentation.
We did send out a mailer to the neighborhood a few weeks ago requesting information as far as no parking, how would they want a no parking ordinance to be worded, and I suggested a no parking 8 to 5 weekdays.
Well, and
And that
just
would
from my
take-
perspective, right now, that's not an option until we go back and try to discuss a more workable solution with the school district. Because we've, I mean, we can't solve one problem by creating another one that's almost impossible to solve. And I don't, you talking about satellite parking for high school kids? There's a reason they drive to school, so they don't have to get on the bus. They're not worried about getting on, about driving to a satellite parking space. So let's work first from a cooperative perspective.
Thank you.
And I think our trump card is that is a solution if we're unable to get any help from the school district, and that is to make it a no parking zone.
Councilor Barnes is next, but Mr. City Manager wanted to say something.
Well, Mayor Pro Tem, I was just going to say I welcome the opportunity that Councilor Henderson has put on the table to meet with Dr. David Lewis and his appropriate staff. I've not had an opportunity to even talk to my staff about the situation. And so, I'm just optimistic in my meeting with the school superintendent and his appropriate staff that we can come up with some assistance from them, a solution to try and help to alleviate. I don't know if it will completely alleviate, but I think we can make great progress to give relief to the neighborhood. I'm familiar with the parking situation over there. My son graduated high school at Columbus High School and did drive to school as well, and that was back during those days when, as Councilor Henderson said, they didn't have marked parking spaces. They all got in where they could get in, and so, but I'll be happy to work with the superintendent and staff to try and bring some resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if anybody on council wants to work along with you, I'll ask you that you allow that also. And if you can bring us something back, you think in a month would be long
Sure.
enough?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Okay, so you can bring us something back next month. Okay. Councilor
Thank you.
Barnes.
I was at that meeting, as you very well know, and Dr. Crum was there with some representatives from the school, and I thought Dr. Crum was very cooperative. I know you two didn't agree on some points, but I thought he was very cooperative. In fact, some of the suggestions that you had made, for instance, not allowing them to drive, I think Dr. Crum said that would be somewhat discriminatory to their citizens as well. And the meeting started out very open-ended, but then it got somewhat contentious because there are some things that you just cannot change. This issue came up in 2008, and Councilor Red McDaniel and I got together along with David Arrington, and we came up with a solution. What the solution was, and the solution that was brought up by the police officer, was citations, and it worked. We contacted the chief, and it solved the problem, and the school district was completely agreeable. But I think that having a meeting with you there to facilitate it somewhat would be a lot more productive. But as far as the school district is concerned, Dr. Crum had 3 individuals from the school, including Ms. Valerie Fuller,
Yes.
was there. So they were, it's just, some things you can be conciliatory on and some you can't. The noise level as far as the games, it's just something that, I think that's locked in cement. And it was, you're talking about teenagers, and I even had to, either things change and develop and move along and evolve, or they become static and they die. This is an altogether different, I think I brought it up at the meeting, with my children and my grandchildren. Things do change. Dr. Crum brought up, how do you know that the litter that's there are coming from the students? You can't definitively say it, and you brought it up at the meeting, you couldn't say it. You're assuming that happened. So these are the things that created the contentious atmosphere where everyone moved away from some of the salient points because it got somewhat contentious. So I think it's a good idea, Skip, that to have the city manager and staff, as well as Dr. Crum, Ms. Valerie Fuller, and some of that staff there present. But the solution was the citations. That worked. And Frosty, the police officer that was there, he remembers because he was the one that was spearheading that or involved in it. But I think that there can be some kind of a definite resolution, because I do realize it is a problem, but it's a problem that can be solved. It just takes a little effort on individuals' parts. But I think we can work through this here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Thomas?
Mr. Lackey, thank you for being here this morning. I just have some general questions, and I don't know if you may be able to answer them, or maybe Ms. Newman, as our director of our engineer department, may. Currently, on Forest Avenue, is that a no parking zone along there?
Along the east side, it is a 2-hour no parking zone. Along the side next to Columbus High School, it is open. They can park along that side.
Okay. Is there a fence along Forest Avenue, along the school grounds there?
There is a fence on the very north end of the property that runs probably 15, 20 yards.
So if I park on Forest Avenue, I can get into the school without having to go around? Is that right? What about on Wildwood Avenue? Is that all open parking? Well, let me go back and ask that a different way. In the map that you have given us of your neighborhood watch boundaries, is there any place where there is currently no parking?
On Wildwood?
Anywhere in this area?
Yes. I think it's in red on there. That is the absolute no parking areas whatsoever. Look at page 9.
Page 9?
Page 9.
Okay. Okay.
Where you see red is no parking whatsoever. There's no time limit on it. It's no parking, period.
Okay. Okay. And you had mentioned something about some of the students parking in the St. Paul parking lot. Do you know
Correct.
if that's any kind of a formalized agreement, or are they just parking there? Or?
If they're parents or they're members of St. Paul United Methodist Church, they're allowed to park there in their parking lot.
Oh, okay. Okay. One of the, Mr. City Manager, one of the solutions that I've seen in some areas that you may want to carry with you to the meeting with the school district is to only allow residents of the area to park in certain places in the neighborhood. They would have a sticker on their car, and if you had your sticker, you could park there, and without a sticker, you're subject to fines and that sort of thing. And again, what Councilor Barnes was saying, it may be that we have to remind periodically the police department to, do a run over there and issue citations if that is appropriate. But nothing, I think, is more frustrating than to have this sort of thing happening at your home and be feel somewhat impotent at being able to solve it. But I also agree with Councilor Henderson. We're not going to stop high school kids from driving their cars to school very easily at any rate. So thank you for bringing this to us. And as Councilor Henderson said, too, thank you for bringing some suggested solutions to help this issue. It's not an easy one. It's one that we struggle with and have struggled with over at the Columbus High School area for some time. and probably unless something dramatic happens, we'll continue to struggle with it. So thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
And let me also say that if anybody else have any questions or comments, you want to get to the city manager before he meets with Dr. Lewis, please do so. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lackey.
Thank you.
Our next individual, Mr. Dan Houston. And he wants to talk about Epic Insurance Brokers and Consultants. Give you your name and address, please.
I'm Dan Houston at 300 Henson, Henson Road in Canton, Georgia.
Thank you.
And I'm representing Epic Brokers. On June 19, 2015, your evaluation committee recommended that we be approved as your consulting and insurance broker for property and crime insurance on an annual contract. At that time, I think you tabled all of the proposals that were issued, and there were a number of comments I'd like to clarify, and a number of comments that I would like to correct. First of all, many of you know us as the McCart Group, and we went by the McCart Group until about 2 months ago. Carlyle Investments invested a substantial amount of money in us, $200 to $400 million, and we joined Epic as an associate member. It's sort of like we're in the state of Georgia, but we're in Columbus. They have no control over us whatsoever. We're autonomous. We are the Southeast Regional Head of the brokers. Jeff McCart is the president. I'm one of the principals as well. As far as local preference is concerned, one of your current insurance brokers is already located in Atlanta. Your insurance carriers are located in Atlanta Metro. And as far as local preference, prior to becoming an insurance broker, I was Director of Risk Management and Insurance for NCR Corporation when it was in Dayton, Ohio. Had NCR chosen local preference, they wouldn't be located in Atlanta as this headquarter. They wouldn't be located here in Columbus. They would have stayed in Ohio. As far as compensation, the fee that we quoted is half of what you're currently paying in commissions for the insurance placed by your current broker. As far as contributions to the neighborhood, the community, Fort Benning has been home. Dwight Eisenhower is my great uncle. My father-in-law is a lieutenant colonel retired from the U.S. Army. What I'm asking is that you consider approving the recommendation made by the evaluation committee and approve Epic Brokers as your insurance broker going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney.
The council has received a memorandum from our office concerning this subject. If you do want to reconsider this matter at all, you have to do it at today's meeting. What you did last time was you took action to reject any and all proposals, meaning that another RFP would have to be completed. Same process. You'd have to go through it all over again at the end of this year. But you can reconsider the vote you took before if you want to. The scoring that you received attached to the memorandum showed that even a local preference of 5% would not have affected the result. But we also talked about some of the reasons that local preference is not necessarily a good fit for this type of a service contract. But it's your discretion whether you want to make a motion to reconsider at all. We think that's appropriate under these circumstances. But if not, you'll be back looking at an RFP process in the near future.
It's council's pleasure. I'm not sure who was first. Okay, Councilor Thomas.
I just have a question. As I recall at our meeting when this was discussed, we were told that the insurance that we had at that time was to be ran through June the 30th. What has happened to our insurance now? Or where are we in the insurance?
City manager, you can comment on it, but we had to renew some coverage with some brokers that we already had coverage with in the past. We did have to renew some coverage, so the city was not uncovered, and I think that's been done for a period of a year.
And that is correct. And I believe it was done for 6 months, not a year. But we had to renew because our insurance was scheduled to expire at the end of June. And in order to be covered, we had to renew. And so we did do that. And Deputy City Manager Hodge can come in.
Yeah, and we did renew those policies for a year. The companies that we had was J. Smith Lanier and Hamby, and both of those companies, in order to for us to continue to have coverage, required that we renew for a year policy, which we can cancel with a 30-day notice. So they have been renewed for 1 year.
Councilor Henderson.
Just a couple of questions. And Mr. Houston, just to ask you this question, I guess, is if the carrier's been renewed and you take over as if council decides to reverse its decision as a broker of record, the savings still exists, I assume, because the difference in the cost per the evaluation committee was in your fees, not necessarily the carrier's fees that we renewed with. Is that correct?
This is how this works. Your property carrier is Travelers Insurance located in Atlanta. The underwriter that you have is the same underwriter I use constantly. With a 30-day notice of the policy, what will happen is commissions will be returned by the broker to the insurance carrier for that period of time. What we will do is going forward, whether it's July 1st or August 1st, we'll prorate the $32,500 fee that we would charge. So there would be no redundancy. However, you are paying twice now what you would be paying us, prorated over that period of time.
Well, I can't help you with a request for recall because even though I didn't think you should have got it, I didn't vote to not give it to you based on the work of the committee. But I did want to ask our city attorney for a little bit more definitive guidance, because I know when we were discussing this the first time, we consulted around the table with you pretty consistently, because there were some issues concerned about the propriety of going ahead and the repercussions of wiping out the RFP process with the intent to reconstruct it utilizing some type of local preference. I guess in case anybody asked for it to be reconsidered, I would like to know, what's your recommendation? I mean, from keeping us whole from a legal perspective, what is your recommendation at this point?
Well, two things. Number one, we would recommend that you reconsider the vote you took at the last meeting. And we would also recommend that you leave the service contract RFP process the way it is on the books and not try to insert some sort of a local preference into that, because it's just not a good fit. But I guess the main thing on the table is we would recommend you reconsider your vote to reject any and all proposals on this matter, because if not, you're going to have to go through another RFP process at the end of the year.
Okay, well, and from my perspective, I think that the more immediate discussion is just whether or not we need to keep the RFP process intact until we can determine whether or not it's feasible to add any kind of local preference. And I appreciate your advice in that area. I know that we had talked about that extensively before this vote was taken, and I was a little confused because I got the impression that it was perfectly fine for us to do that there would be no implications from a legal perspective as we went forward. So I didn't vote for it, but I think that's why a lot of my colleagues did.
Right, and let me make it clear. You can insert some sort of a local preference in your service contract RFP proposal. It's just not a good fit. And even a 5% allocation for some sort of a local presence or local office would not have changed these results.
Well, and with all due respect, not to belabor it, but I don't know that we know if it's a good fit just yet. We've only talked about it for a couple of weeks, and I think that there are probably other communities that have wrestled with this same type of issue, and I think that's an issue to be taken up subsequently.
That's a separate discussion, and your finance folks obviously want to have input, but that's something you can weigh.
Okay, thank you.
Is it proper for me to ask? Is it okay if I ask for reconsideration?
It is. You were voting in the majority last time. Is that correct, Ms. Washington?
I make a motion that we Let's consider.
Question?
Yes, sir. Councilor Allen.
I'd like to ask the clerk to go back and look at who voted how to make sure we're doing this properly.
Right.
My understanding, it was 6-4.
That's what I recall.
Yeah, I did the 6th one.
Give me the Allen. Okay. Henderson, Baker. Okay. It was 6-4. Voting yes was Councilors Allen, Barnes, Buck, Davis, Huff, and Councilor Thomas.
So those are the ones that may call for.
Allen, Barnes, Buck, Davis, Huff, and Thomas.
So I can't ask for reconsideration.
That is correct, because you voted no.
Okay. Okay. So what's council's pleasure? So since I have no lights on, and there's no reconsideration from the individuals who voted against it, it stands as is, right?
That'd be correct. Without a motion, it would stand any and all proposals were rejected as of the last meeting.
Okay.
And there is no reconsideration for the record.